Riley Herbst's future is currently uncertain at the moment for 2025, and Braggs obviously gives a little bit of an update on RFK Racing's future as they look to expand to a three-car operation in 2025. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just show them straightnos really quickly. First, going to talk about the Las Vegas Xfinity Series race. As it was announced yesterday, they have a new title sponsor for the next couple of years for the fall race. The race is going to be called the Focus Health 302. This partnership will go from 2025 through the 2026 season. And Better Health, of course, did sponsor the most recent NASCAR Xfinity races, a continued partnership with that. It's a really good partnership, really exciting to see that they're continuing this partnership. Focus Health, of course, has a big affiliation with Trackhouse, Inspire, and those companies. It's really good to see that they'll be once again working with the Las Vegas Xfinity race once again next year. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Martin Truex Jr. Now, this came across social media, I believe, on Friday afternoon. But it looks like that Martin Truex Jr. is going to be running a throwback scheme on the final race at Phoenix in a couple weeks. It looks like he's going to be running a throwback to his 2017 NASCAR Cup Series championship when he won the championship in 2017. The scheme, from my vantage point, looks absolutely incredible. JR did a fantastic job, looks very similar to the scheme. It's very creative, and it's really good to see that Joe Gibbs Racing is honoring Martin Truex Jr., who, of course, will retire from full-time racing at the end of this year. It's really exciting to see that. I think it's a really good-looking scheme, and I'm glad to see that at least he's getting honored because he deserves to be honored for everything he's accomplished and done in this sport. Congratulations, Truex, on a great career. I think this game looks absolutely amazing. It looks really incredible and really awesome overall, to be honest with you. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about lead changes. As it was reported by Trey Ryan that 2024 has had 6 races with 40 or more lead changes this year. That is tied for the most ever in a single NASCAR Cup Series season. It is tied with 1974 and 1982. That is absolutely incredible. Now, most of those races, of course, have come as super speedways, but one that kind of shocked me, I think, was Kansas in the spring, if I'm not mistaken, and Bristol also was on there as well, where there were a lot of lead changes when we had the crazy tire race. I think it's absolutely wild to see that so many drivers were able to lead. We had so many lead changes. Yes, I know super speedway racing is a little bit needs some fixing with the next-gen car for sure in certain areas, but I think it's wild and crazy to see that we've had a lot of races this year with 40 or more lead changes. I don't think it's going to happen the rest of the year, but we'll have to wait and see what happens if that can change going forward. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Bowman Gray. As it was announced on Friday or Saturday that Bowman Gray has tickets on sale for the 2025 Busch Light Clash. Remember, Bowman Gray is going to be hosting the 2025 Busch Clash. And obviously there's a lot of excitement around the event. Though it's going to be very cold at the race because the race is expected to take place at night. It could change and probably run in the daytime. But many people are expecting it is going to be a night race. I think it's pretty crazy that this event is going to still be happening. And it's good to see tickets are on sale. I'm not sure what the price are going to be. From what I understand, they're a little bit more expensive than normal. And of course, they're going to have that new ticket stuff that they're doing, which is going to charge a lot bigger fees. Nonetheless, it looks like tickets are officially on sale for the 2025 Busch Light Clash. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Jeff Gordon and William Byron. Now, earlier this week before the USGP took place, which we'll talk about here in just a short little bit, Jeff Gordon and William Byron were in the Aston Martin paddock. Why? Well, they have a partnership with Valvoline. Valvoline is a big partner with the Aston Martin brand. Jessica Hawkins, who's been working with the Aston Martin team for many, many years, she was at, I believe, the Charlotte Roval last week, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a really cool partnership. I love seeing NASCAR and Formula One find a way to partner with each other. And I think this is a really good partnership overall to see this. And I hope this can continue. We maybe get to see some NASCAR drivers test out some Formula One cars in the future, like Kyle Larson perhaps. I think that would be pretty awesome to see. So I kind of hope we do get to see more of this stuff going forward and more of this partnership coming up. I think it's really exciting stuff for sure nonetheless, and really amazing and great to see that both Jeff Gordon and William Byron were able to be in the Aston Martin paddock on Friday while all the practice and qualifying sessions were going on. Pretty exciting stuff overall. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the U.S. Grand Prix. While you have the South Point 400 from Las Vegas going on, you also had the U.S. Grand Prix as Circuit of the Americas. At the beginning of the race, you had a front row of Max Verstappen and Lando Norris. Lando Norris had a terrible start, and Max Verstappen got a great run to the inside and took the race lead for a second. But then all of a sudden, Charles Leclerc, he got the run and took the lead going down to turn number 2. And from that point, Charles Leclerc would continue to dominate. Unfortunately, Lewis Hamilton fell out of the race early after getting stuck in the gravel trap on lap 5 or number 6. And pretty much at this point, the best part of the race was between Lando Norris and Max Verstappen to get that point. Unfortunately, Lando Norris got a 5-second penalty for basically going off the track, even though he might have gotten moved out there, just saying. But Charles Leclerc, it didn't matter for him as he would come off the corner and pick up, I believe, his third F1 victory of 2024. Charles Leclerc is slowly moving his way into the championship conversation, though it's going to be really tough if Verstappen can still stay up in the top 2 or 3 in most of the races. Nonetheless, congratulations to Charles Leclerc on winning the U.S. Grand Prix. It's well-deserved and well-earned. Nonetheless, congratulations to him on winning the U.S. Grand Prix earlier this afternoon. Well-deserved. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Teresa Earnhardt. As it was reported by Adam Stern yesterday that Teresa Earnhardt is planning to transform 399 acres in Mooresville into an industrial park. I don't know what the name exactly is going to be, but she's going to be going to the courts, and it looks like she's going to be going to counties to try to get this done. Now, originally when I saw this, I was very, very mad at Teresa Earnhardt, but I'm going to take back what I said on Twitter. I don't think it's awful that she is doing this. Again, Teresa Earnhardt has not done a lot of great things, and some of the things that she's done over the years are completely unjustified that she's done. But it makes a lot of sense to do this. It's been 23 years, and she is almost 7 years old. When you're a lot older and selling off a lot of acreage of land that you really can't maintain when you're a lot older, it's not really the end of the world, all things considered. Am I the biggest fan of Teresa Earnhardt? No, absolutely not. At least she's given up control of the A, and Dale Jr. is looking to seize control of that, which is a really good thing and not a bad thing overall. I get why people are frustrated with Teresa in certain instances, but at the same token, same time, in this situation, I really can't be mad for her for doing what she needs to do. Again, I understand people, again, being frustrated with Teresa in these situations, but I don't think Teresa's making a bad decision, selling off a ton of land, which of course she'll be able to make a lot of money, which there's nothing wrong with that, to be honest with you. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Cadillac. As it was reported by Adam Stern earlier today, that Cadillac may have acquired the rights to the IP of the Renault engines going into 2026. This comes from a report from Joe Sayward, who's been right on some things when it comes to reports, but has also been not correct on all the information he has released in the past. Now, obviously, Renault has had a partnership, and they originally were supposed to have a partnership with Cadillac when they came in 2026, as Andretti has, of course, been trying to get into Formula One, but obviously the FIA and the FOM unfortunately denied that opportunity for Andretti to get into Formula One. Now, recently it was announced that Michael Andretti would be stepping down from a major ownership role. He still have a slight ownership role in the team, to my understanding, but not a full ownership role in the organization. Giving up the rights to the Cadillac brand and having a chance for Cadillac to buy out the Renault engines, honestly, is a really, really good thing because it gives a chance and opportunity for Andretti to maybe, just maybe, finally find her way into Formula One, which I think we all want Andretti to come to Formula One. And obviously, Michael's been very outspoken, which has caused a lot of the tension that's been going on in recent weeks, in recent years especially. I know we all want to see them come in, and hopefully with Cadillac being bought up by Renault, this could give them that chance and strong opportunity for this to possibly happen. So I hope it can get figured out and resolved soon so Andretti can maybe, just maybe, find her way into it in Formula One in the next couple of years. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ryan Ellis. As it was announced on Friday afternoon that Ryan Ellis will leave Alpha Prime Racing in 2025 and join DGM Racing starting in 2025. The number was not officially announced, but my guess will either be the number 92 or the number 91 car for next year. This is definitely a little bit shocking. Ryan Ellis has been with Alpha Prime Racing for the last couple of years. It's had some pretty solid runs with the organization organization in the past, but also this team has taken a little bit of a step backwards. And one area where Alpha Prime Racing has struggled throughout the year has definitely been qualifying. They've been getting out-qualified by some of the smaller organizations. I think Ryan Vargas nearly out-qualified them this past week at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, and it just feels like that this team has taken some step backwards after having a top 20 car early in the season. I think that Ryan Ellis going to DGM is a very solid move for that team, and bringing Ryan Ellis, who I think does have a lot of talent, I think he's going to be bringing a lot to the table for this organization in 2025, and he's also bringing a lot of sponsorship in, which also is going to help this organization because they're not going to need to have a lot of funding for Ryan next year. My prediction is Ryan Ellis will probably contend for around 20th to 21st in the points. There's going to be a lot of really good competition in Xfinity, which we'll get to hear in the later portion of this episode. But I think Ryan Ellis going over to DGM, it's a pretty solid move for his career. And I do think that Ryan will do a really solid and a pretty good job in that car next year. And I think he'll have some pretty solid performances throughout the 2025 NASCAR Xfinity Series season. This is a fantastic and a really good opportunity for Ryan. Wishing him the best of luck as he heads over to DGM Racing organization for the 2025 Xfinity Series campaign. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the IndyCar booth. As there was reported by Adam Stern on Friday evening, that IndyCar is working with Fox on selecting the booth talent for 2025. And continuing on from the report, Mark Miles declined to comment on Alan Bestwick and whether or not he will join the IndyCar booth for Fox in 2025 or if that is not going to be true. There was a report that came out, of course, from Jenna Fryer last week after I believe the Cup race had concluded that originally it was reported that Alan Bestwick, James Hinchcliffe, and Townsend Bell were going to be the IndyCar and Fox booth for 2025. However, James Hinchcliffe, who basically commented on one of the shows that he's on, the Ask Off Track show that he does, and he pretty much confirmed to the media that that is not true, that Jenna Fryer had reported it. He basically dissolved that rumor that had been going around. I really hope that Alan Bestwick, truthfully, will be part of the IndyCar on Fox booth. I think Alan Bestwick should be calling races. He's one of the best commentators out there, and I really wish he was calling NASCAR races to this day. I think Lee Diffie's done a fantastic job on the NBC side, but if you can't find a way to get him to the IndyCar side of things, you got to get him on the Amazon side of things for NASCAR or TNT, because I think Alan Bestwick absolutely will do an amazing job calling a race. Now, from my understanding, he also is under contract with IMS Productions as well, so that could help us chance an opportunity to be part of this booth. It's unknown when it's officially going to be announced what booth we are going to end up seeing for 2025, but it does sound like there's a really good chance Alan Bestwick could end up joining. I really hope it ends up happening, becomes true, because I want to see Alan Bestwick be part of this booth, because I do think Alan Bestwick will do an amazing and really solid job if he does truly get the chance and opportunity to be part of the Fox booth for the 2025 IndyCar season, as they do, of course, transition over to Fox next year. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kevin Harvick Incorporated and Rackley WAR Racing. As it was announced on Friday morning that KHI will be partnering up with Rackley WAR Racing for the 2025 campaign. Kevin and Keelan Harvick will be racing Rackley late models for the Pro Late Model Series, I believe in the Cars Late Model Tour and other late model races throughout the 2025 season. Also, Kevin Harvick will serve as a consultant for Rackley WAR Racing and will also be a mentor and will help guide Dawson Sutton throughout the 2025 campaign. This is absolutely huge. KHI has not been involved in NASCAR in any sort of capacity since I believe the 2011 season. They, of course, had a chance to win the championship with Ron Hornaday Jr. in the Truck Series in 2011, and Kevin Harvick, of course, won a ton of races in 2011, the last year that he brought the team, and they also had won some Truck Series championships back in 2009 and 2007 as well. Having Kevin being part of the Rackley WAR organization who's looking to resurge and get better is huge. They have struggled this year immensely in the Craftsman Truck Series. Then they put Dawson Sutton behind the wheel for a race, and Dawson did a very solid and great job behind the wheel of the number 25 truck. And of course, Dawson will drive the 26 truck full-time next year. Having Kevin Harvick be part of the organization for next year and being there to help is really, really huge for the team, and I think it's going to help. They were really solid last year with Matt DiBenedetto, but then they fired him at the end of the year, and they just had not been the same. You need to bring someone in there who's really going to help that program. And I think Kevin Harvick coming in and KHI coming in, which will bring some money into the organization as well, is really, really huge. So I absolutely love this move. I think it's a fantastic move for the organization to bring Kevin Harvick incorporated in. And I truly do believe that KHI coming in and working with the team, especially with the late model side as well, I think is going to be absolutely huge for that team. So I'm really happy about this. This is really, really fantastic to see. And I do truly believe that you are going to see improvement from Rackley WAR Racing going into next year, as I do think they're going to show a lot of improvement throughout the 2025 campaign in the late model scene and also on the truck side next year. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Dale Jr. Now, there was a original report that came out, I believe, from On3 Studios that does a lot of reports and I think has association with Penske, if I'm not mistaken. But they originally reported that Dale Jr. had kind of spoke on the charter lawsuit, where Dale Jr. actually was kind of defending at the time the Bill France and all the people part of the France family in regards to the charter lawsuit. But then Dale Jr. actually in the comment section below actually corrected it by basically originally saying that 2311 Racing has every right to do what they need to do if they want to make money. Obviously, we've talked a lot about the lawsuit on this channel. There's been a lot of speculation on the future of certain drivers who are part of the lawsuit who we'll get to hear in just a short little bit on their futures. But I'm glad that Dale Jr. is correcting the situation and words are not being put out of his mouth. Considering the fact that I think Dale Jr. has kind of said his piece. Obviously, Dale Jr. we know has kind of been interested in getting a charter, and I think that's one reason why people thought maybe he kind of thought about getting one and why he was kind of defending NASCAR, because some said they were interested in maybe him getting a charter for Junior Motorsports, which they said they're still open and there's a chance that it could happen in the future. But I think correcting the word and basically saying that what he was being put out there is not true, I'm glad to see that he went ahead and corrected it, because it absolutely needed to be corrected, because I don't think Dale Jr. wants to defend NASCAR on certain things, unless, like I said, he wants to get a charter, which I certainly think that Dale Jr. is still, like I said, very interested in getting a charter for next year. It's going to be very interesting to see how the charter stuff plays out, which we'll talk about a couple more times on this channel very, very soon. But I do think that Dale Jr. absolutely correcting the situation is the best thing that he could absolutely do, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kevin Harvick once again. Now, Family Man on Twitter basically put out a video that surfaced from the Cars Late Model Tour race, where Kevin Harvick commented on racing in the late model scene. Kevin Harvick pretty much called out the next-gen car after he finished, I believe, in the top 5 for Rackley WAR. And he says it was fun to race in the late models, and it was actually fun to race in an actual race car. Now, Kevin Harvick obviously did race in the NASCAR Cup Series about a year or so ago, but retired from full-time racing at the end of the year. And it's not just Kevin Harvick who's been very critical of the next-gen car. A lot of former drivers have also been critical of the next-gen car. Mark Martin, of course, has been critical, if you've been on social media, about the center numbers not being centered, which Mark's been on a single of that. And then, of course, there's other drivers who are former drivers who've retired that have been critical of this next-gen car. Obviously, the next-gen car has a lot of fundamental issues and a lot of fundamental flaws. I think it is still a race car, but it's not a car that I think a lot of drivers really love. It is a spec car. It is a kit car. We all know that it doesn't race great on short tracks. It doesn't race great at road courses for the most part, though I will say the road course racing this year has definitely improved just a little bit, but I do think the racing could definitely be a little bit better on the intermediates too, even though I think the intermediate racing has been solid this year as well. But I do think the racing this year has been okay, and I do think the next-gen car hopefully can get some improvement on the other types of tracks. Because again, like I've said, I do believe that the next-gen car does have a lot of fundamental issues itself that NASCAR needs to work on, especially for the short tracks, right? Short track racing is the bread and butter of NASCAR. And if you can't get that right, you really have no chance of being super, super successful. So I really hope NASCAR can continue to work on that, which NASCAR says they are technically working on it, but I'm not exactly sure if they're truly working on it to fix the problems. I think trying out increasing horsepower might not be a bad suggestion, but overall, I do think that there are some things that need to be worked on with the car, but I think that absolutely Kevin Harvick has a right to criticize it, which there's nothing wrong with criticizing a next-gen car, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Jimmie Johnson. As it was reported by Dalton Hopkins from Front Stretch, that Jimmie Johnson spoke after the NASCAR Cup Series race in Las Vegas, where he actually was able to cross the finish line and not crash out and finish inside of the top 30. Now, Jimmie Johnson did confirm that he will be racing sometime in 2025. But it's to be determined at this point how many races exactly that Jimmie Johnson is going to be racing in 2025. Now, going into the 2025 season, Jimmie Johnson will be 50 years old. And Jimmie Johnson, of course, is getting a lot older. Now, Jimmie Johnson obviously, of course, has struggled in the next-gen era, and many people have said, especially on social media, have said that Jimmie Johnson should probably retire from racing altogether and focus on being a team owner. They actually fired a lot of the people on this 84 car. Jason Burdett got fired from the organization, and Gene Waddle, who's been working as a higher-up at Legacy Motor Club, was the crew chief for Jimmie Johnson this weekend. Now, realistically, how many races do I think Jimmie runs? I don't think he's going to run 9 or 10 races like he did in 2024. Realistically, I think he at least cuts it down to half and runs probably around 4 to 5 races next year. I also could see there being a potential possibility that Corey Heim could also drive that 84 car at some point next year as well, even though he might still have a chance going Cup, but we don't know at this point. I do think Jimmie's going to run the Daytona 500. The Daytona 500 is the biggest race every year, and I think Jimmie still wants to race in the Daytona 500, so I do think he's going to run the 500. I think he could run the Chicago Street Course. I know he wanted to run it in 2023. There's obvious unfortunate reason why he didn't run it in 2023. I think the Brickyard 400 is definitely a major possibility. I think the Southern 500 could definitely be a possibility, and I do think the Coke 600 also could be another race he ends up running as well. Because I do think Jimmie Johnson still wants to race. I know Jimmie has absolutely struggled in the next-gen car. But at the same token, same time, seeing him race, it's fun to watch. And again, I know he's been struggling, and I hope he can get better in the next-gen car in the races that he ends up running. So we'll see, in fact, how many races he truly ends up running. He's probably going to announce the schedule for 2025 in the not-so-distant future. That's what he did last year. I do think he'll announce him not too far down the road. We'll see truly how many races he does end up running in 2025, but I do think he's going to run at least 5 races next year and probably at least for sure run the Daytona 500 for sure in the 2025 NASCAR Cup Series season. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Christopher Bell and Ryan Blaney. Now, after the NASCAR Cup Series race concluded at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, Christopher Bell, unfortunately, after not winning and finishing second by nearly 0.7 of a second, Christopher Bell definitely was very frustrated after the race. If you listen to the audio, Christopher Bell, for the first time in a long time, I have not seen him that mad in a long time, got very frustrated on the radio after the race. And he also, after the race, spoke to the media, and he was not very happy with Ryan Blaney. He basically was criticizing Ryan Blaney going down the front straightaway for helping push Joey Logano up there and get past Daniel Suarez for the race lead. He was critical also of Blaney because of the fact that Ryan Blaney is still a championship contender, while Joey Logano, who we'll talk about in a little bit, also went on to win the race and get in the championship 4. Because of Joey Logano getting in the championship 4 with the win, Ryan Blaney is now nearly 40 points below the cutoff line and is pretty much going into the next 2 races in a must-win situation. Though I do think that Ryan Blaney is going to have a chance to win maybe next week at Homestead and potentially at Martinsville in a couple weeks down the road as well. Ryan Blaney also was talked about this by Bob Pockrass, and Ryan Blaney kind of dismissed Bob Pockrass a little bit on the question, and also he kind of dismissed Christopher Bell on the question as well. Now, to be fair to Ryan Blaney, Ty Gibbs is also pushing Christopher Bell to try to get him a little bit of an advantage. Ty Gibbs was multiple laps down after spinning out, was 3 or 4 laps down at that point in the race, so he's definitely helping Christopher Bell just a little bit. So I do understand Christopher Bell's frustration a little bit at Ryan Blaney, but I don't think Ryan Blaney should be the one that Bell is directing his frustration at. I think that Christopher Bell did have a little bit of a bad pit stop, unfortunately, lost a little bit of time. Had he just had a slightly better pit stop and they done everything perfectly, Christopher Bell easily goes on and wins the race and beats Joey Logano even without the field. But now Christopher Bell, he's still in a very good position, right? Christopher Bell is 42 points above the cutoff line going to Homestead, which he won last year at Homestead, by the way. And of course, he's been good at Martinsville as he did win the fall cutoff race in 2022. So I do think that Cristobal's got a really good chance. I get Cristobal's frustration because it looked like he was going to have a really good chance and opportunity to win the race and make it to the championship four very easily. But now he's going to have a little bit of work to do. Luckily, like I said, I do think that Cristobal is going to be very fast and very strong. But I do understand at the same time the frustration. And I do get being a little bit upset and frustrated at Ryan Blaney for the situation, but at the same time, he's got to do what he's got to do and try to help his teammate, even though he probably should not have been fully helping his teammate, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Martin Truex Jr. Now, Martin Truex Jr. was speaking to media yesterday. I believe Bob Pockrass actually caught up with him and had a comment about the 2025 Daytona 500. Now, Martin Truex Jr. is expected to run the 2025 Daytona 500 with 2311 Racing, with Cole Pearn expected to be the crew chief. Now, it has not been officially announced at this point. He is, of course, running the Daytona 500. The big reason for that is because of the current charter negotiations and for 2311 and Front Row and the lawsuit that's going on. Remember, 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports are currently at this moment suing NASCAR, and they're hoping for that injunction to be officially granted on November 4th. Once that happens, I do think that Martin Truex Jr. will be officially announced at that point. Martin, of course, is also expected to run a few other select races in the NASCAR Cup Series next year. I'd have to think maybe he runs Southern 500, maybe runs a Coke 600, and he's going to probably run some races with Joe Gibbs Racing in Xfinity and probably make some truck starts with Tricon Garage before the end of 2025. But reason I think it's been held up at the moment is because, like I said, of the charter situation going on. It's so good, though, that Martin isn't completely walking away from the sport. I think many of us kind of expected that he was going to walk away from the sport altogether because Martin seems like that kind of guy. But it's good that Martin is still being committed and also is probably helping out his brother, too, who still doesn't have a full-time ride for 2025, even though we do think that Ryan will be part-time with Joe Gibbs Racing next year in 2025. Though, personally, I do think he should be full-time next year. But I do think that it will get figured out in the future, but I do think Martin Truex Jr. really wants to win the Daytona 500, which is why he wants to run it, which there's nothing wrong with that. I think Truex has earned the right and opportunity to make a few select races next year, and I do think that he'll be very competitive regardless of how many races he truly ends up running next year. Because I do think, like I said, he's going to run the 500. It's the only race that is scheduled for him currently at the moment, and it will be in a 2311 car. You might see Carl or someone else get that chance maybe in the future as well, or Kurt Busch perhaps, but I do think that Martin Truex Jr. they'll get it figured out with the charter stuff. They'll get it sorted out very slightly. And I do truly think that Martin Truex Jr. will get the chance and opportunity to officially run the Daytona 500 in 2025. But they do got to wait for the charter stuff to get finalized for this stuff to end up having and sorting it out. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ryan Blaney once again. Now, after the NASCAR Cup Series race concluded at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, Ryan Blaney was speaking to the media, including Kelly Crandall, and she had some very interesting comments around Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney said after the race that he was hurting after the race. Now, basically, if you were paying attention, during practice yesterday before the Cup Series race took place, Ryan Blaney had a tire that got punctured after they ran over something going to turn number 1, and unfortunately went up the racetrack and smacked the outside wall very, very hard. It came out of the infield care center after that. He said he was hurting a little bit, but he said he felt fine and was definitely more focused on trying to get the best finish he could going into the race. And then, unfortunately, in today's NASCAR Cup Series race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, Ryan Blaney was collected in the big incident that took place down the straightaway. Tyler Reddick flipped upside down in that wreck. Brad Keselowski got collected, and Chase Elliott also got collected. Brad Keselowski careened back up the back front straightaway, and Ryan Blaney really had nowhere to go in the incident and hit the outside wall pretty hard. Now, Ryan Blaney was able to continue in the race, but unfortunately didn't feel very good, and he told the media and told the spotter and people in this team that he's going to need some Advil after the race. Now, for those a little bit concerned, Ryan Blaney did say that he does plan to race this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway, so he should be good to go to run, but obviously, of course, he does have to be medically cleared to be able to go ahead and do that, but I think more than likely he will be medically cleared to finish the season. He says he plans to be out there. I don't know if he'll have a replacement driver. My best guess is Cole Custer would be the replacement driver, or Riley Herbst to be the driver to take over if, let's say, he does end up having to miss. but I do think Ryan Blaney will probably feel a little bit better. But you think about Ryan Blaney, right? Ryan Blaney has had a ton of massive hits in his NASCAR Cup career. That wreck at Talladega a couple weeks ago, he hit the outside wall extremely hard and just careened back up the track, and he destroyed a car. You go back to Daytona in the summer race, he hit that outside wall extremely hard. And then you think about Nashville, he hit the inside wall very hard. Ryan Blaney's had a lot of big wrecks in his career. And if you continue having wrecks, you could have head injuries, which is really, really concerning. I really hope Ryan can be feeling good enough, though, to finish the year. Obviously, Ryan doesn't want to miss races either because he wants to finish and have a chance to go back-to-back. We haven't seen a driver go back-to-back in the championships and Cup since Jimmie Johnson, of course, went 5 in a row from 2006 to 2010. I really hope he can be good enough to go to finish the rest of the year because I think Ryan Blaney deserves to have the chance and opportunity to win the championship at the end of the year. Again, he's got to be feeling good enough, though, to do it. I hope he can be good enough to do it, and hopefully he can feel well enough because, again, another big wreck could be very, very serious going forward. I hope he's okay, and it seemed like he was okay, but he also was hurting. Hope Ryan Blaney can definitely be good enough to finish the year in 2024 and be healthy enough also for 2025. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Joey Logano. As there was reported by Steven Sump from Front Stretch that Joey Logano in his 3 combined wins has led 9, 6, and 6 laps, or 9, 9, and 6 laps. Joey Logano has combined led 24 laps in his 3 wins so far in 2024. He, of course, won at Nashville, where he led 9 laps in that race when there were 5 overtimes, and that got him into the playoffs. Then, of course, he won the other 2 races at Atlanta, where he only led 6 laps that day, or 9 laps that day, but was up front a lot of that race and had a very strong car. And then, of course, he won today at the race at Vegas and is now racing for a championship and is racing in the Final 4. And that's where I want to kind of talk about the system a little bit. I was a little critical in my race review yesterday, but today I want to talk about it because there really is no reason that Joey Logano should be racing for a championship right now. He would be one of the biggest Mickey Mouse champions if he truly does, in fact, end up winning the championship. Joey Logano got in the championship this year and had a chance to race for the championship because he legitimately got in because of 5 overtimes when everybody ran out of gas. He was 14th or 15th in the race, by the way, and still somehow won the race because he had somehow enough gas. Then he won Atlanta to get to the round of 12. Wasn't the fastest car all day, but still had a very, very good car. Was originally eliminated in the round of 12. And then he somehow gets in because Alex Bowman gets disqualified. Then he gets to win in a fuel mileage race and beats Christopher Bell. Logano had a solid car, was his most legitimate win today, I'll give you that. But Logano was not the fastest car. Christopher Bell was more deserving than Joey Logano. So Joey Logano making the championship 4 is really just a big problem with the system that NASCAR has. It's better than the knockout system from 2014 to 2016, but this system is very flawed. There's no reason a driver like Joey Logano, who's been very inconsistent, and let's just say this, Bubba Wallace, Ross Chastain, and Chris Buescher would have made it over Joey Logano if we didn't have the win in your in system. So obviously this system is very, very flawed. Logano's 15th or 16th in the points, and he somehow is going to find a way to make it in, while drivers like Chase Elliott and Tyler Reddick, who've been objectively better this year, are probably going to miss. The same with Ryan Blaney, Denny Hamlin. They've been all better this year, and they're probably going to end up not making the championship 4 because of how flawed this system is. It's really frustrating being a fan sometimes. It kind of turns you off from watching the sport. I don't like the system personally. It needs to be changed, but I really don't know if NASCAR is going to ever change the system, to be honest. I think they're still going to continue to do the same things they've been doing, and it's really frustrating, to be honest with you. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Hailie Deegan. Now, Hailie Deegan, of course, had her first Indy NXT test as, of course, she will be joining the Indy NXT series in 2025. She had some very intriguing comments. Of course, like I said, she'll join H&B Motorsports, and she had some very intriguing comments. Now, in the first practice and NXT session that she had, she was off by nearly 6 seconds off the field and about 6 or 7 seconds behind the leader. Not very good. But Hailie Deegan then improved in the second session, and she jumped from being 6 seconds back down to being only about 3 seconds behind the whole entire field. this shows that she did show a lot of improvement. Now, being off by 3 seconds, that does not look very good, and I know a lot of people are going to criticize her for that and say that she is definitely not ready to join Indy NXT. Now, let's be realistic here. Hailie Deegan has little to no open wheel experience. I know she was not that great in NASCAR, and her criticism after being in that series for the last 4 to 5 years and not really showing an improvement is very justified. But the fact she did show improvement, at least after her first test, show me she will get up to speed, I believe, at least a little bit quicker. Again, it's going to take her some time to get used to open wheel racing. Now, she is this far off the pace as the year progresses and goes on, and she's still 3 to 3.5 seconds back. Then we're going to have major issues, and then we're going to have conversations. But I think just because she just had her first test, let's pump the brakes a little bit on the criticism. Again, I know she's still off by 3 seconds. That still is a major gap that she definitely is going to have to make up, and she will have to improve by the end of the year. Ultimately, the goal for her is to try to be closer to the front of the pack on the road courses. I do think on the ovals, she actually will have a legitimate chance to get some podiums, especially if H&D Motorsports. She's not going to be guys like Miles Rowe in the race, but I certainly do think that she'll have a really good chance and opportunity to at least finish a lot better in those oval races. The road courses, I think, will be her struggle. I thought she was a good road course racer because she did have that experience in the GT stuff in IMSA, but obviously that did not end up really working out for her. And I hope that, like I said, she can run well enough to show that she has a potential possibility. It is good that she is getting that experience, though, and she'll probably get more testing going forward to get better. She's got to show improvement, though, throughout the year, and I do think she has a really good chance and opportunity to show that improvement, so I really hope she can show that she has that potential. I don't know, though. We'll see how she ends up doing. I'm a little worried about her going into next year, but hope she can show a lot of improvement in 2025. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Alex Bowman. Now, the big story around Alex Bowman this past week was the disqualification. Remember, he had originally gotten into the round of 8, but unfortunately, after the NASCAR Cup Series race concluded, at the Charlotte Roval, Alex Bowman unfortunately was disqualified for being too low in weight. And Hendrick Motorsports did not appeal that disqualification, meaning that Alex Bowman went from originally being in the round of 8 after the Charlotte Roval to now being eliminated in the round of 12. Now, Alex Bowman on Saturday reacted to the disqualification news. He says that he found out on Twitter from a Bob Pockrass tweet, and then he threw his phone into the pool, which then all of a sudden called 911 and sent the police over there because they thought that he was in a car crash. He said also that I think he had a chip in his windshield, if I remember correctly, and had other issues that came up throughout the week. So Alex Bowman had a very, very bad week. Obviously, this is one of the biggest disqualification news stories we've had all year, and I feel bad for Alex Bowman, and bad luck Bowman continues. And I really still feel for Bowman fans especially, too, because Alex Bowman himself did nothing wrong. And today at Las Vegas, he showed why he deserved to be in the round of 8. And you think about early in the year, too, Alex Bowman was all this talk and conversation around the time the playoffs started, that Alex Bowman was going to lose his ride potentially if he didn't perform well in the round of 16. There's that talk that Justin Haley was going to take his seat for 2025 because Justin Haley, of course, is going to Spire Motorsports. There's talk about other drivers coming in and taking his seat. But then Alex Bowman came in and disproved those rumors, and didn't just disprove them talking to the media. He disproved them by performing extremely well in these playoffs. Alex Bowman has been extremely impressive this year and has continued to show why he's one of the best drivers and deserves to be behind the wheel of the seat. And to lose your chance to go for a championship based off of tech that you had nothing to do with and your team really pushed the limit, which Jeff Gordon told the media that they were extremely embarrassed by the mistake that they made, and they took complete responsibility for that. I feel bad for Alex Bowman. And then just have all that other stuff is really frustrating. And I also do find it a little weird that Hendrick Motorsports would not have told Alex, and that Alex found out on Monday. That is really, really kind of frustrating because I feel like that the driver should absolutely know what is going on. I get that the team really plays a role on the weights, among other things, and especially messing with the car. but I do think that Alex Bowman should probably know what is going on when it comes to that situation. I don't know, just a thought that would make a lot of sense for Hendrick to tell him. And I do feel like that Alex Bowman deserved that after he had originally earned it and had no longer a chance to get in. And of course, it did benefit Joey Logano to get a chance to go for a championship. So I feel bad for Bowman in this situation, and it's just to see that his week continued to be way worse than it was. That was really frustrating. I feel bad that they couldn't even tell him what was going on. And again, I do feel like he probably should have knew that. That being said, I feel bad for Bowman, but now the focus is on 2025, and hopefully they can continue to turn around and continue proving running how well they've ran, because Bowman has been pretty solid and pretty good in these playoffs, and I hope he can continue running as well as he's done so far in these playoffs this year. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Denny Hamlin. Now, Denny Hamlin spoke to the media on Saturday among a lot of different things, including charter talk and also about the potential of hosting the championship and having Steve Phelps help. Denny Hamlin says that he has not had any discussions on the approval of the Stewart-Haas Racing charter. It's been reported that Denny Hamlin and 2311 Racing Course have purchased a charter from Stewart-Haas Racing. 2311 is one of the organizations. Front Row is another organization that's purchased a charter. Haas Factory Team, of course, will continue to have one of those charters, which we'll talk about here in just a second. And we also know the Trackhouse Racing, which will expand to a 3-car operation in 2025. They also will have a 3-car team next year with Shane Van Gisbergen behind the wheel. They will be a 3-car team next year. It came out earlier today, and there's been reports that they are expected, of course, to expand to a 3-car operation, both those organizations. But NASCAR wants to deny both 2311 and Front Row competing as charter teams next year. Why? Well, remember, as I mentioned just a second ago, they, of course, are suing NASCAR. We know that the teams are wanting an injunction to run in the 2025 campaign. Now, going to the championship side of things, Denny Hamlin did say that Steve Phelps will actually help him basically go ahead and hoist the championship up in the air. I really think a lot of people can say that Steve Phelps really is the problem with the sport. I don't think Steve Phelps is the one that Denny Hamlin is really frustrated and mad at. He's really mad at Jim France, and that's who they're really suing at this point. We do know that they're wanting the books open, but obviously if Denny Hamlin does win the championship, which, let's be real and honest, is going to be really tough for Denny Hamlin to have a chance and opportunity to win the championship now with Joey Logano getting the win today. I think it's going to be a lot tougher for Denny Hamlin to get that done and go in and win the championship. But if he does have a chance to win, let's say he wins Homestead this week or wins Martinsville perhaps, maybe he does win the championship because Toyotas were very, very strong and very fast at Phoenix especially. I could definitely see him hoisting that championship. Now, continuing on with this story, the owner of Stewart-Haas Racing, or the guy who will be running the Haas Factory Team, Joe Custer, basically spoke to NASCAR, or basically spoke to reporters, and Joe Custer did say that nothing has changed in regards to their plans for 2025, and he did confirm that they are not going to be keeping any charters if the sale does not get approved. They also, of course, are not planning to sell it to any other teams. There's been reports about RFK Racing looking to expand. There have been rumors about maybe Junior Motorsports wanting to get a charter, something like that, which obviously that is not happening currently at this moment. And they will still be only a 1-car team in 2025. That, of course, is absolutely huge if the sale does not go through. Now, remember, NASCAR themselves has to approve the sale for it to go through, which is why the sale, of course, has not gone through at this point because, obviously, like I said, 2311 and Front Row, which are two teams that have purchased a charter from Stewart-Haas Racing, they, of course, are suing NASCAR. So, obviously, this holds up drivers like Riley Herbst and Zane Smith going into next year, and it does affect other teams. Todd Gillen spoke to Bob Pockrass earlier this week, and he basically said, too, that we know the Front Row, they're expanding next year to a 3-car team. They also did confirm the Truck Series operation is no longer in the Front Row main shop, as, of course, they've expanded. We don't know where the truck shop is going to be for next year at the moment, but obviously that is really huge. But I look at the situation with the approval of the SHR charter, right? And you think about this. There could be as many as 6 charters up in the open market going into next year, which could cause silly season to get a lot more wild and a lot more crazy, which I certainly think with some of the stuff we're going to talk about here in a minute, I do think silly season is going to continue getting crazier and crazier as time progresses and goes on. As more comes out from the story, we'll continue to talk about it here on the channel. NASCAR, of course, has to prove it. Once the injunction is granted by the judge, if they do grant the injunction, I do think you'll see them officially confirm there'll be a 3-car team in 2025. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next major story of today's episode, as we're tying up some loose ends in regards to silly season for 2025. Beginning with a tweet from Couch Racer. Yesterday, they had reported that there might be some other crazy silly season moves that might be coming down the pipeline for 2025. And that tweet continued on from earlier today. They had originally reported that basically a certain driver needs to outperform their team owner in this event, otherwise their ride could be up in the air. Now, currently there's only 2 team owners in the NASCAR Cup Series. Jimmie Johnson, who raced today, and Denny Hamlin. Now, obviously, Tyler Reddick and Bubba Wallace, who, well, of course, Bubba did not finish ahead of Denny Hamlin today, but Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick, they're both set for the next couple years. So I don't think it's going to be them. So who could it be, perhaps? Well, there's really only 2 other drivers that I think of, and that's Erik Jones and John Hunter Nemechek. Now, Erik Jones, remember, just signed a multi-year contract extension with Legacy Motor Club. So I can't think that that is him. I would have to think it's John Hunter Nemechek. Now, John Hunter Nemechek did get a top 10 finish, which probably saved his job at least for the rest of the year, potentially. But let's be real and honest. John Hunter Nemechek has struggled immensely this season. He started off very, very well. And yes, he did have a good run at Vegas and showed some really good pace and speed, which is something they desperately needed. But they have struggled badly this year. John Hunter, I believe, is currently the lowest in the point standings right now for full-time drivers. He's had a lot of crashes and a lot of spins. And he's been, even with a couple races at Jimmie's race, he's been outperforming John Hunter. So John Hunter really needs to step it up to the plate. I think having a run like today at Las Vegas Motor Speedway is really going to help his cause and really help his future. I think Corey Heim would have to be the driver that would be his replacement, or maybe Riley Herbst if they don't find a way to get the situation resolved at 2311 Racing. Continuing on, Parker Retzlaff talk from J.R. Houston. Parker Retzlaff, according to this tweet, it sounds like his future might be a little bit in question as well. We don't know what he's currently doing for 2025. Obviously, Chevrolet sounds like they're still not happy with what happened with the Kyle Busch situation, which I don't really understand why they're pissed off there. They shouldn't be mad, in my opinion, about that. But if he isn't back at JR or Jordan Anderson Racing, I wonder if he goes to a Toyota team or a Ford team next year. That could certainly be a possibility. I think he's been really solid with Jordan Anderson Racing, but I feel like a team should want him, and I'm not sure if Jordan Anderson Racing or Chevrolet really wants him at this point. Some crew chief conversation I also saw. It sounds like Travis Mack more than likely is going to Legacy Motor Club to be a crew chief potentially for John Hunter or Corey Heim next year. Travis Mack, of course, announced recently he will not be back crew chiefing for Colleague Racing as they're making some structural changes over at that team and organization for next year. It also sounds like, according to something I saw from NASCAR Nostalgia, that Chris Lawson is probably going to be crew chiefing for Todd Gillen in 2025, though that has not been confirmed, which would mean that Chris Lawson would go back into the front row camp, and that also probably mean he'd be managing the truck operation as well, as that team looks to continue to improve their program. Dylan Cabela's been a really good crew chief for trucks, but I think having Chris Lawson work with them would be a really good move. And finally, let's talk about Chandler Smith. It sounds like Chandler Smith's future at Junior Motorsports at Joe Gibbs Racing is very much up in the air currently at the moment. Chandler Smith has been heavily rumored that he may not be back at Joe Gibbs Racing in the 2025 season. It sounds like William Swalch might be the favorite take over his ride for 2025, as William is expected to move up full-time to the team in 2025. Chandler Smith, in my personal opinion, should be racing full-time in 2025. He's been very good this year. He's been one of the most consistent, and in the Winston Cup style of points, he would be the points leader right now. So he should be in there. But obviously, you've got drivers like Taylor Gray and William Swalch and, of course, Brandon Jones to bring funding. And unfortunately for Chandler, from what I've heard, he's lost a lot of funding that he currently had going into this season, which is why his future is definitely in question a little bit currently at the moment. I do think Chandler could find somewhere to go, like a good team, but those rides are drying up quickly. Maybe he goes to Legacy. That could certainly be a possibility for next year, and he replaces one of the drivers. Nonetheless, it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of the silly season plays out, because I do think there's some pretty big moves that are coming down the pipeline that could change how the silly season goes in my honest opinion, it's going to be interesting to see how everything plays out for the remainder of this year. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're talking about RFK Racing. Now, one thing we've talked about a lot on this channel in regards to silly season has been RFK Racing. There's been a lot of talk about him potentially expanding to a 3-car operation in the 2025 campaign. Now, Bragg Zossi did catch up with Bob Pockers this week about certain topics, but one of the conversations that Bob had asked Brad about was RFK expanding to a 3-car operation. Bob asked him, it's been about a month since you guys told us you might announce something, and you haven't made that announcement yet. Well, Bragg Zossi did say they had nothing to announce at this time. However, he did say that they are excited for the future going forward. It has been heavily rumored that RFK Racing, like I mentioned a second ago, is likely going to expand to a 3-car operation in the 2025 campaign. They are expected to pick up the Kroger sponsorship from JTG Daugherty Racing, who will likely move over to the team. And with how much money that Kroger is bringing to the organization, they likely bring in the sponsorship that they bring with all the products they have, they're going to need to bring a 3rd car in. Sure, you could obviously have the RFK, the 2 cars from Chris Buescher and Brad Keselowski. They, of course, could end up getting the sponsorship there, but obviously they want to get a 3rd car. Now, who could be some candidates, perhaps, to get behind the wheel? Maybe Zane Smith, perhaps. That could certainly be a possibility. Maybe Riley Herbst, perhaps. That could be an option. Maybe Matt DiBenedetto. That could also be a possibility, but probably not. Everyone has been saying it's going to be Ryan Preece. Ryan Preece has been the lead candidate to go to the 3rd RFK Racing car for 2025. Ryan Preece has a previous working relationship with Kroger, as of course he drove for JTG Daugherty Racing when they were over at the Kroger brand, and of course they really like Ryan Preece from some of the B2B deals they've had. It's also no secret that many people in the garage do feel like that Ryan Preece has not gotten a fair shake in the NASCAR Cup Series at this point. You think about the 2 teams that he's currently driven for. He originally drove for JTG Daugherty Racing for the couple years, and he didn't really have a lot of great runs. He did get a top 5 in Daytona 500, but JTG Daugherty Racing is no secret. They are not the fastest organization on the planet and in the world. So that makes a lot of sense why, unfortunately, they have struggled just a little bit there, but I think that they were a little bit struggling too. And then, of course, in 21, they ran an uncharted car, and they just weren't that fast. And then you, of course, think about the other team, Stewart-Haas Racing, after getting some opportunities with Tricon Garage, where they switch over to Tricon in 2023. And Ryan Preece joined SHR. That was the first year that Stewart-Haas Racing went winless. Kevin Harvick failed to win. He did make the playoffs, but they failed to win. And then, of course, 2024 has been a tumultuous year as they're shutting their organization down at the end of this season. Now, Ryan Preece, I feel like, has been really solid in the lower series, and I think he'd be a really good lower series driver. But I also think he has, like I said, like some of the people have been saying in the garage, I really don't think he's been getting the fairest shake out there. And I do truly believe that he should be full-time in the NASCAR Cup Series once again with RFK Racing. Now, how realistically do I think he's going to do if he does end up driving full-time for the team next year? I do think that he will be very, very solid. I don't think he's going to be a championship contender, and I certainly do think that Brad Keselowski and Chris Buescher are going to outperform him, but I do think a top 20 points position is definitely possible. RFK has shown so much improvement this year. They've been faster. They've been getting quicker. Now, the other big thing, though, is that charter is probably, of course, going to be coming from Rick Ware. Rick Ware has not announced their plans at this point for 2025, but it does sound like Corey LaJoie is the favorite to jump in for the 3rd full-time seat next year or stick around with the Rick Ware Racing organization. I do think that you also see some drivers like Harrison Burton, perhaps, Sam Mayer maybe, and also Cody Ware, and maybe J.G. Elliott perhaps get a chance to drive in the seat, at least on a part-time basis, so we don't know how many races the 15-car is going to be showing up next year. But I really do like the future for RFK Racing, and what I do like is the fact that them being a 3-car team would be really huge for the organization. I do think it's going to happen. I do think it's going to be announced very, very soon. I think they're also kind of waiting to see how the charter stuff ends up holding up because, of course, the charter situation is going on, and it's affecting the market currently at the moment. It's going to be very interesting to see how everything plays out, and we'll see how it ends up going. But I do think in the not-so-distant future, we'll get official confirmation. I do think it's going to eventually be announced that you will see this move happen where RFK Racing officially expands to a 3-car operation in 2025. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Riley Herbst once again. Now, this weekend, Riley Herbst is speaking to media in his hometown. And one thing that came up in regards to Riley Herbst is his 2025 plans. And Riley Herbst basically spoke to me about that and says currently at the moment that his future at the moment for 2025 is currently on hold at the moment. He says he's waiting for some dominoes to fall going for 2025, but he doesn't really know what he's doing currently at the moment for the 2025 season. Riley Herbst is among many drivers currently at the moment right now that do not know their futures for 2025, except we kind of know where Riley Herbst is expected to go for the 2025 season. It's been reported that 2311, of course, is expected to expand to 3 full-time entries for 2025. But the reason that Riley Herbst has not been announced in this organization yet for 2025 is because of the current litigation and the lawsuit going on between 2311 Front Row and NASCAR. This also is the same position that Zane Smith is also in currently at the moment. Zane Smith is a favored driver to join Front Row Motorsports full-time for the 2025 campaign. But obviously Zane Smith can't get announced there at the moment, even though they said back in July they were going to announce that really quickly because of the current lawsuit going on at the moment. That's why both these guys have not announced their plans for 2025. For Riley Herbst, I do feel really bad for him because I do think Riley Herbst truly has earned at least slight chance to go Cup racing, even though I do think Corey Heim should be the driver full-time. Now, could they certainly run 3 full-time cars next year and run a 4th part-time entry? That could certainly be a possibility for 2311 Racing, but it's going to be very, very expensive. Now, there's one team that I really feel like they could end up doing, of course, it is 2311 because of the money they do bring, especially with Riley's family, really helping funding this organization going into next year. We obviously know this is the favorite place for him to go. Now, let's just say this all ends up falling through. Where could Riley Herbst end up going? Maybe Legacy Motor Club. I saw that tweet. That could certainly be a possibility. There's really not a lot of Xfinity rides out there that are options currently at the moment. Maybe somehow goes to JGR, but I don't think JGR would want him back personally. There has been rumors about Tricon Garage being certainly a possibility, maybe taking a 17 truck. I have heard that might be a backup plan in case everything falls through. But I don't think Riley Herbst wants to go back trucks. I know he has told the media that he wants all options to be available for him going into 2025. But I certainly have to imagine that Riley Herbst wants to move up to the Cup Series. He feels like he's earned the right and opportunity to move up to the Cup Series next year and drive for 2311 full-time. Obviously, that is what is expected currently at the moment. But again, they're waiting for the lawsuit and stuff to get filed. Now, of course, let's just say they do end up getting granted that injunction. They will be able to officially announce that purchase. Again, NASCAR does have to obviously basically confirm the purchase coming into play. And we do know the fact that NASCAR, for the open organizations, they are going to be giving out a lot more money for those open organizations in 2025. But if you want to get the best money possible, you're going to have a charter for next year. And obviously 2311 is really affected by that, same with Front Row, who are currently in the lawsuit currently at the moment. Now, do I think that this ends up getting solved? It really depends on what the judge wants. And I do think even if this does end up happening, I still think there's a really strong chance that you do see Riley Herbst end up in a 2311 car next year. Because he's obviously not going to go to the Haas factory team. Sam Mayer and Sheldon Creed, they've taken those seats for next year. And I do truly believe that he wants to be a Cup driver next year. And again, I think he has earned the right to move up the Cup. I think it's some of the select Xfinity starts from this, select Cup starts from this year. He has performed very, very solidly. He's not on the same level as guys like Chase Sully, Kyle Busch, Bubba Wallace, any of those guys. But he has performed pretty solidly, and Kyle Larson too. But he's performed solidly in the select Cup starts he's ran, all things considered. I really hope for Riley's sake they can get the situation figured out so he can be full-time next year. Because I do think it'd be cool for him to get the chance to be full-time and be a full-time rookie next year. He'd be a little bit of a younger rookie, too, because you're going to have Shane Van Gisbergen next year in that rookie class. And you're also going to have some other guys coming up like AJ Allmendinger and Cole Custer, or going back Cup racing. So I really hope they can get it figured out. Again, his future is definitely a little bit uncertain, and it's definitely a question mark on what's going on with this team currently at the moment for 2025. But I do think it's only on hold right now because of the current charter agreement, or them not signing the charters, and NASCAR, of course, is looking to revoke those charters going into the 2025 season. We'll see how everything kind of gets sorted out, and we'll see how it plays through. But definitely there's some future questions that need to be asked about Riley Herbst's future currently at the moment for 2025. So that is going to today's long NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Let's go below that and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. Do you think Riley Herbst truly ends up at 23-11? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And do you think RFK will eventually go to 3 cars? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Tomorrow on the channel, we will have basically the entry list video for the race at Homestead, and we also will have basically the race picks for the Truck Series race. Then on Wednesday, we'll have a NASCAR news video and the Xfinity Series race picks. And I've got a lot of other great and awesome content dropping this week as we take you to Homestead Miami Speedway. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.